He was always more than just a familiar face on a TV screen. He was a man whose presence could shift the energy of an entire room, whose warmth was not just a public persona, but something tangible, real, and deeply felt by those lucky enough to stand within his orbit. A man whose reputation in an industry known for consuming its own was unmarred by scandal or arrogance. A man who, as people often said, had his father, meaning he carried himself with that rare foundation, that grounding, that sense of direction and self-respect that many young black men in this ruthless business fought to protect. The world woke up to heartbreak one quiet morning when news broke that Malcolm Jamal Warner, the smiling boy who grew up before America's eyes, the magnetic man who carried the innocence of an era long gone, was gone. Found lifeless in the shimmering waters off the coast of Costa Rica, his death was quickly labeled a tragic accident by the news media, the kind of phrase polished anchors say with rehearsed solemnity. But to those who knew him, nothing about this felt like an accident. The shock rippled through fans and friends like a sudden storm. The internet became a flood of tributes, old clips from his early roles, candid moments where his laugh was genuine, unforced, and full of life, flooding timelines with memories that drew tears even from strangers who had only known him as a character on a screen. Hollywood legends spoke his name with a heaviness that betrayed their grief. But in the middle of this wave of mourning, there was one silence louder than all the public weeping, one absence more haunting than the endless montages. His wife. Not a word, not a photograph, not even a clipped statement through an assistant. She vanished as if the years she had spent by his side were erased overnight. Then came the voice that would shatter the quiet, the voice of his mother, Pamela Warner, a woman whose eyes had seen too much loss to be fooled by convenient narratives. Standing before the cameras, hands trembling but jaw set with unbreakable resolve, she spoke words that made the air in the room turn heavy. My son's death was not what they say it was. For weeks she stayed silent after that, digging, listening, waiting, until a truth too heavy for any mother's heart to carry emerged. Malcolm had a $200 million life insurance policy, hidden from public knowledge, unknown even to his closest friends and family, and in the days after his death, that fortune was transferred without delay into his wife's personal account. Pamela's grief curdled into suspicion, her suspicion into war, her war into an obsession for justice, because this was no longer about a son lost to the sea. It was about whether the man the world loved had been deliberately taken. The waves had been calm that morning, the sun painting the Costa Rican horizon in shades of gold and rose, a postcard-perfect scene that now carried a sinister undertone. The news didn't feel real. No illness, no warning, no goodbye, just gone. Reporters spoke of an accident with a professional detachment that barely masked the hollowness of the words, while tributes poured in from every corner of the world. Fans uploaded photos from meet and greets, actors recounted set stories through cracked voices, and the internet transformed into a shrine for the man whose presence had been a constant comfort. But amid the flood of love and memory, that same hollow space persisted, his wife's complete absence from public view. She was missing from memorial photos, absent from social media, unreachable to the press. It was as if she had evaporated the moment Malcolm's heartbeat stopped. The silence broke when Pamela stepped in front of cameras, smaller now in frame but radiating a strength only grief could forge. She recalled his childhood, how he had learned to swim almost before he could walk, how the water had always been his safe place, and how she could not accept that the sea had claimed him like this. She demanded answers. Answers that never came. Weeks passed, headlines began to fade, but Pamela refused to let go. Then came the moment that shifted her from suspicion to certainty. Malcolm's own lawyer, a man who had known him for decades, sat across from her and revealed the life insurance policy. $200 million, and the sole beneficiary was his wife. Worse yet, the payout had been processed within days of his death, without delay or dispute, straight into her account. Pamela's heartbreak hardened into a mission. She confronted her daughter-in-law, seeking explanation, but the exchange exploded into a fight so venomous that Pamela threw her out of the family home, ending all contact. From that day forward, Pamela stopped thinking of herself as just a grieving mother. She became an investigator, a soldier, her own detective. She tore through bank statements, phone records, contracts, and travel itineraries, piecing together inconsistencies that made the official story The FBI's investigation began to crystallize into something far heavier than speculation, and Pamela could feel the current shifting beneath her feet, each new piece of evidence pulling her closer to the truth she both craved and feared. Weeks of silence gave way to a storm of leaks, each one more damning than the last. Whispers of travel records showing Malcolm's wife leaving the country less than 48 hours after his death, surveillance placing her in a bank the following morning, and rumors of a private investigator tailing Malcolm in the weeks before that final night on the dock. Pamela's phone buzzed constantly, reporters begging for statements, strangers claiming to have inside information, some hoaxes, some opportunists, but a few, just a few, felt real. One message came with a grainy photograph showing Malcolm and his wife in what looked like a tense confrontation, their bodies angled toward each other, faces tight with strain, just hours before his death. Pamela stared at the image until her eyes burned, her mind replaying every conversation she'd had with her son in recent months, wondering if the unspoken weight she had heard in his voice had been a warning she'd failed to catch. Then came the call from the FBI. The agent's tone was measured, careful, but the words made Pamela's knees weaken. "We have enough to shift this from an inquiry to a full criminal investigation." The leaks turned into headlines, the headlines into a frenzy. The world debated whether Pamela was a grieving mother, turned truth warrior, or a woman blinded by sorrow. But the avalanche of evidence began to crush the official narrative. And then, one late afternoon, her phone rang again. Not the FBI this time, but an old friend of Malcolm's, his voice cracking. "They're about to announce it. Turn on the news." Pamela's heart pounded so violently she could hear it in her ears. She switched on the TV, just as the anchor, wearing that grave expression reserved for national tragedies, began to speak. "The FBI has officially ruled Malcolm Jamal Warner's death a homicide and named his wife as the prime suspect." The words prime suspect echoed in her mind like a bell tolling for war. She had suspected it, fought for it, bled for it in court filings and media battles, but hearing it confirmed was not victory. It was a fresh wound. The details spilled out slowly, each one a knife twist. Enhanced audio from the dock's security camera capturing fragments of a heated argument about money and freedom. The grainy footage showing a deliberate push, not a stumble, not an accident, but a clear shove, sending Malcolm into the water. And worst of all, the confirmation that she had stood there, watching, making no attempt to dive in or call for help, walking away within 2 minutes of his fall. Pamela covered her mouth as tears poured, her mind screaming against the image of her son's final moments, alone, struggling in the dark water. The anchor's voice pressed on, detailing the financial trail. Offshore accounts accessed within 48 hours, property purchased under aliases, and the $200 million payout arranged and funded by her in the year and a half before his death. Pamela remembered confronting her that day, the coldness in her eyes, the absence of even a single tear, and now understood she hadn't been grieving. She had been executing a plan. The internet erupted, hashtags reigniting, tributes mixing with outrage, strangers posting messages to Pamela urging her to keep fighting. But there was no relief in this moment. Justice was still an ocean away, tangled in extradition laws and legal labyrinths. The FBI issued an arrest warrant, but she had vanished, last seen boarding a private jet. With $200 million at her disposal, she could hide for years. Pamela faced the cameras again, her voice quaking but sharpened with steel. "My son did not die in vain. I will spend every last day I have hunting the person who took him from us." She hired her own investigators to work alongside the FBI, contacted international journalists, and forced Malcolm's story into headlines across the globe. In quiet moments, she sat with his sweater clutched to her chest, whispering, "I'm sorry I wasn't there." Then, an anonymous leak hit the media like a lightning strike. An email Malcolm had sent to a friend just 2 weeks before his death, reading, "Something feels wrong. I can't explain it yet, but if anything happens to me, promise me you'll talk to my mom." Those words became a rallying cry, printed on banners at vigils, shared millions of times online, the movement swelling beyond Pamela's reach. Months later, a tip surfaced from Eastern Europe. Reports of a woman matching the suspect's description living in a guarded luxury villa. The FBI refused to confirm or deny, but Pamela felt it in her bones. The dock in Costa Rica, once just a stretch of wood over quiet waters, had become a place of pilgrimage. Fans traveled from around the world.